Her moment of rage becomes viral. Before anybody knew what had really transpired, those statements went viral on social media. Because what happened between Aryna Sabalenka and Alex Eala was not only a point or a rally. Fans questioned if they had just seen the emergence of a new rivalry since it was such an unvarnished and honest event. One shout, one swing, and one unbeatable victor. Suddenly, everyone in the stadium halted in shock. Sabalenka looked at Eala as if it were unbelievable that she had lost at her own game. Eala should not have retaliated in that way. She should not have snapped. However, even the most composed players have odd effects while under pressure. Something inside of her shattered in that instant. Or perhaps something woke up at last. What transpired would split the tennis community and cause this moment to go viral for both positive and negative reasons. A tale was quietly developing behind the scenes before the moment went viral and the video appeared on TikTok, Twitter, and every tennis website on the internet. A tale that went unnoticed until it erupted. Alex Eala had been moving up the ranks more quickly than anybody had anticipated. She should not have been the one endangering the giants. It was not her place to appear on center court with a level of confidence that seemed virtually unattainable for a 19-year-old. She was also not expected to be the player that the world's top player had to be concerned about. Tennis, however, is not a scripted sport. Each season, it writes new ones. In the conventional sense, Eala was not a prodigy. She did not come with the fearsome force of an early career Sabalenka or the excitement of a Coco Gauff. She had something far more erratic. Critics were uncomfortable with his composure, patience, and precision. They said she was too calm, too quiet, and too little to do any serious harm. Even if she claimed they didn't, those remarks remained with her. And she appeared to sense something deeper within herself with each victory. Something that is just ready to explode. In contrast, Sabalenka was on the other side of the tennis world. A two-time Grand Slam winner, a formidable lady whose screams caused audiences to recoil. She was pure athletic intimidation. She was already half defeated when players entered bouts against her for years. Her serve was warming in addition to being quick. Her forehand was difficult in addition to being hefty. Not only was her personality fierce, but it was also unyielding. Nobody anticipated that she would see Eala as a danger because of this. The two had previously met in tournament rooms, player lounges, and practice courts, but there had never been any actual conflict. Not up till now. Not until the young Filipina's wins began to build and the season changed. It was not until pundits started murmuring, "She reminds me of a young Sabalenka." Some players take comparisons as praises. They were like sparks on parched grass to Sabalenka. Even yet, hardly one foresaw the impending storm, despite the tension silently building. Eala was not the subject of the same compulsive attention from cameras as top seeds. The majority of fans had a hazy impression of her. She was brilliant, disciplined, promising, and not threatening. Not quite yet. But strain was mounting behind Eala's calm demeanor on the court. Pressure brought on by expectations. Pressure from detractors, pressure from bearing the dreams of a country on her shoulders, and pressure from realizing that she would need to transform into a different version of herself in order to defeat someone like Sabalenka. Everything hinged on their next meeting, which was meant to be a regular match that started like any other. However, as soon as they entered the court, something seemed different. Sabalenka grinned. For the first time, their energies clashed like two storm fronts colliding in the midst of an open sky, and Eala did not flinch. No one was aware of it yet. However, this was the match that would alter everything. The internet was about to collapse at this precise instant. She finally lost it at this point. Everyone in the crowd felt something under the surface, something sharp and uneasy, even if the game started with the usual excitement. At first, it was not clear. It was not too loud. It was the type of tension that lurks in specifics. An extended gaze, a firm hold on the racket, an excessively lengthy pause. And it was hard to overlook the details between Eala and Sabalenka. Sabalenka came out fighting from the opening rally, as if she intended to end the match before it had even begun. She sent power shots far into the corners, hammering the ball with that distinctive savagery for which she was renowned. Under tremendous strain, the majority of players broke. Eala, however, did not. She took each blow with an odd serenity, as if she had anticipated the storm and was prepared to face it head-on. The initial trigger was that. Because Sabalenka was not used to seeing that expression, not from strangers, not from younger players, and particularly not from someone who was meant to be scared by her presence. Something sparked beneath Sabalenka's face when Eala faced his first powerful forehand at an even sharper angle. It is recognition, not terror. Realizing that this would not be a regular situation. Then the moment arrived that completely altered the match's intensity. Nearly 20 shots in a lengthy comeback, with neither player giving up. Sabalenka struck hard, in a desperate attempt to make a mistake. With a level of resolve that made the audience murmur, Eala pursued ball after ball. Suddenly, Eala launched a crisp, booming and unmistakable forehand winner down the line, landing exactly on the baseline's edge. The stadium let forth a gasp. Sabalenka became cold. Eala did not celebrate either. She just moved toward the baseline, turned around, and got ready for the next point. The second trigger was that calm confidence and reluctance to accept Sabalenka's intimidation. Sabalenka turned to face the umpire. A brief grievance. There is something regarding the cue. There was something about the ball being out. However, the replay was evident. The ball made contact with the line. Not even close. The audience was aware of it. The umpire was aware of it. Sabalenka was also aware of it. However, this was no longer about the purpose. It has to do with pride. Returning to the baseline, Sabalenka gazed across the court as if expecting Eala to respond. However, Eala's silence just made her more enraged. Eala counterattacked with such accuracy that Sabalenka staggered backward in an attempt to reach her next serve, which came like a bullet at 120 miles per hour. The third trigger. Sabalenka mumbled something beneath her breath at that very time. The intensity abruptly shifted, but the cameras missed the whole statement. The audience felt it. Eala felt it. And Eala's face lit up with emotion for the first time. Fire, not fear. The match was no longer about tennis after that. It has to do with control. It has to do with respect. It was about establishing one's place. After defeating Gesso, Aryna Sabalenka is back with us. Every point marked the start of the photo that would soon become globally famous. Everyone in attendance sensed the shift in the game from competitive to explosive. A nearly tangible change in energy. Every eye in the stadium focused on the same truth as the rallies became longer, louder, and more frantic. It was no longer a contest. It was an altercation. For Sabalenka, Aya's poise just made everything worse. Aya responded to the Belarusian's massive forehands with a calm accuracy that bordered on disdain each time. Nothing hurts deeper in the world of professional athletes than an adversary who refuses to break, even if it is not deliberate or evident. And social media went into a frenzy because of that unwavering calm. Before the first performance was even over, clips started to circulate. People were not only watching the match, some shared slower replays of Aya's winning line painting, captioning them with things like, "The kid's not worried at all." Others focused on Sabalenka's face after losing a crucial point, tweeting things like, "She is going to burst." They were anticipating the moment at when everything broke. The rally that ignited the internet followed. When Sabalenka thought she had finished the point with a big cross-court shot, Aya slipped, reached, and created an improbable flip pass that painted the sideline once again. The audience did not start cheering right away since the shot was so ridiculous. They paused, nearly doubting the reality of what they seen. The stadium exploded as soon as the line judge certified it was in, and Sabalenka's response went viral online like a spark striking gasoline. The microphones barely caught a mumbled sentence, a step forward, then a stare. It just required that. Fans on the internet analyzed each frame in a matter of minutes. According to some, Sabalenka cursed Aya. She was whining to herself, according to others. Some people stood up for her. Some referred to it as intimidation. The video already had a life of its own, so the truth was irrelevant. Commentators joined in. Players from the past offered their opinions. Debate threads erupted when tennis sites posted side-by-side comparisons of Sabalenka's annoyance and Alice's composed demeanor, labeling images with remarks like, "the future versus the present." There were fan camps. The plot was just too compelling. Aya continued to play as if there was no digital pandemonium at all. However, Sabalenka was not exempt from the commotion. Cameras saw her breathing deeply, shaking her head, and holding her racket tighter than normal during changeovers. She was not going to melt. Not quite yet. However, she was being forced to go somewhere she did not often go. There, she seemed fragile, human, and breakable. Half of the spectators was aware that the match was quickly becoming history by the time Iga broke Sabalenka's serve. While the other half waited for the unavoidable explosion, they observed Sabalenka. The court was no longer the only place where the tension existed. It seeped into live streams, group conversations, phones, and the audience. Something was going to break. When it occurred, the occasion would turn into a global video. The one that transformed a champion into a storm and a rising star into a headline. At first, Sabalenka's loss of control was not audible. It was not an explosion sound, a shattering racket, or a scream. There was only one quick exhale. When irritation eventually triumphs, athletes let go of their kindness. It was worse than any explosion she could have made, however, because of the hush that followed. Due to the stadium's auditory system, every camera panned in, almost anticipating the next fracture in the armor, as soon as Iga heard it. In the second set, it occurred at 42. Sabalenka fired a backhand that was inches off after another vicious rally. This time, instead of staring at Iga, she whirled around and glared at herself, her box, the umpire, anything to deflect the internal strain. For the first time in the whole fight, she seemed trapped as her chest rose and sank. Fans would subsequently call the break at that point. Her footsteps were heavy as she made her way to her towel, saying something that the microphones could only hear pieces of. It was not beautiful, whatever she said. Videos of it went viral right away. She allegedly cursed at the umpire, according to several supporters. Some said she was making fun of AW's composure. Nobody knew the truth. However, stories do not wait for information. They write on their own. And following the triumph against outsiders, Aryna Sabalenka joined us once more, calling Sabalenka a horrible sport. Her devoted supporters supported her, claiming that she was under a great deal of stress. Traditional tennis players had issue with the intensity. Younger admirers praised it, describing it as authentic, raw, and ultimately dramatic. Everybody had a viewpoint. However, Iga had a different feeling. Because Iga started to feel the burden of being on the other side of Sabalenka's displeasure as it increased. It had nothing to do with fear. It was not intimidation. It was much more intricate. Athletes seldom acknowledge this. She felt accountable. Not guilty, but accountable for pushing Sabalenka into uncharted terrain. Accountable for being the catalyst. And that inner struggle intensified the impact of what came next. Sabalenka made the decision to go all in on the very following point. She served with such force that it reverberated across the stadium. Iga returned a drifting ball that sat upright in the middle of the court after barely getting a racket on it. Sabalenka gave it her all in the onslaught. A forehand intended to put an end to the game, the rally, and the uncertainty. However, it cut the tape. The smallest touch of tragedy, the smallest kiss of the net. Sabalenka's face broke when the ball fell back onto her side. Her racket took off. Thrown enough to startle the crowd into quiet, but not recklessly or at anybody. The stands echoed with gasps. Commenters became silent. Even Iga halted, not knowing whether to gaze up or turn away. It was the kind of incident that athletes would prefer not to have publicized. Raw, unvarnished, and vulnerable. Gasps. The crowd were not kind either. The video quickly went viral on social media, with comments like, "She is losing it." Iga damaged her emotionally. WTA breakdown looming. However, the criticism was not what hurt the most. It was Sabalenka's and everyone else's realization that momentum was no longer waning. The whole globe was witnessing the unraveling as it had already dropped. The match no longer seemed like a competition as the dust cleared and Sabalenka's racket touched the court. It was like making a confession. Unspoken, unacknowledged, but exposed in the fissures of a champion's poise and the ascent of someone who had at last taken charge of her own destiny. It was not a spectacular outburst that revealed the truth. It came silently. Iga saw something she had never seen in Sabalenka before as she glanced around the internet. Vulnerability, not anger or intimidation. Beneath years of domination, pressure, and expectation is a human moment. It was more than simply a defeat for Sabalenka. The narrative she had created for herself was slipping away from her. The tale of being indestructible, impenetrable, and unshakable. And Eala knew just how it felt in his heart. She had been balancing who she was and who she was becoming for a long time. The world knew her as a